I just found out my husband has been lying about his job for 3 years, and the truth is so much worse than I ever imagined. I don't even know where to start. My hands are literally trembling as I type this on my phone in a Target parking lot because I can't go home right now. I can't face him. I can't face any of this. This morning, I thought I was married to a successful regional sales manager who traveled twice a month for work. Tonight, I discovered that everything, and I mean everything, has been a lie, and the reality is so twisted that I still can't fully process it. Let me back up and give you the full context because you need to understand how we got here. My husband James, 34M, and I, 29F, have been married for 5 years, together for 8. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Portland when I was finishing my master's degree in social work. He was charming, funny, incredibly attentive, and told me he worked in pharmaceutical sales. He had this energy about him, confident but not cocky, successful but humble about it. He was exactly the kind of stable, ambitious man I'd been hoping to find after a string of relationships with guys who had no direction. Our relationship moved pretty quickly. Within 6 months, we were living together in what I thought was his nice 2-bedroom apartment in the Pearl District. Within a year and a half, we were engaged. He proposed at Cannon Beach at sunset with a ring that must have cost at least 000, a gorgeous oval-cut diamond that made all my friends jealous. The wedding was beautiful. We honeymooned in Bali. Everything felt like a fairy tale. Now here's where I need you to understand our financial situation, because it's crucial to this story. When we got married, James told me he was making around 000 a year with bonuses. Good money, but not insane. I was making 000 as a licensed clinical social worker at a nonprofit that worked with foster youth. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We could afford a nice apartment, occasional vacations, date nights, the whole thing. About 2 years into our marriage, James came home one evening looking stressed. He sat me down and told me that his company was restructuring and his territory was being changed. He said that for the next year or so, his base salary would drop to around 000, but his commission potential would actually be higher if he worked harder. He asked if I'd be okay with him taking on more travel. Instead of twice a month, it would be more like once a week, sometimes for 3 to 4 days at a time. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I understood. The economy was weird, companies were cutting costs, and I wanted to be a supportive wife. Plus, he seemed really stressed about it, and I could tell he felt like he was letting me down. I told him we'd make it work. We'd tighten our budget a little, maybe cut back on eating out so much, and it would be fine. That was 3 years ago. For 3 years, James has been leaving every week for business trips. He'd pack his little rolling suitcase, kiss me goodbye, tell me he loved me, and head off to Seattle or San Francisco or Denver or Phoenix. He'd text me throughout the day with updates. Meeting ran long, these clients are exhausting LOL, or hotel Wi-Fi is terrible, might not be able to FaceTime tonight, or dinner with the team, wish you were here instead of these boring guys. He always brought home little things from his trips, a coffee mug from Pike Place Market, saltwater taffy from the San Francisco Pier, a small cactus from Arizona. Thoughtful little gestures that made me feel like even when he was away, he was thinking of me. And here's the thing that makes me feel so stupid. I never questioned it. Not once. Why would I? He seemed tired when he came home, like someone who'd been in back-to-back meetings and dealing with difficult clients. He'd complain about his boss, about unrealistic sales quotas, about how much he hated staying in hotels. It all seemed so real. Our sex life stayed good. We still had date nights when he was home. We'd talk about our future, maybe buying a house in a few years, maybe starting a family once we were more financially stable. We argued sometimes, like all couples do, but nothing major. I thought we were happy. I thought we were building a life together. I should mention that James handled most of our finances. I know, that's red flag number 1, and I feel like an idiot for not being more involved. But here's how it happened. When we first moved in together, he had this whole system set up with spreadsheets and budgets and automatic payments, and he seemed to really enjoy managing it all. He was good at it. All the bills were always paid on time. We had money in savings. When I'd ask about our accounts, he'd show me the balances, and everything looked fine. We had a shared checking account where our paychecks went, and then we each had our own personal fun money accounts. Every month, we'd each transfer to our personal accounts to spend on whatever we wanted, no questions asked. It seemed like a healthy system. Financial advisors literally recommend this approach. My personal account was connected to our shared account, so I could see money moving around. I could see mortgage payments. We'd bought a small house 2 years ago, more on that in a minute. Utility bills, car payments, insurance, groceries. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fine. Now let me tell you about today, and why I'm sitting in this parking lot having a complete mental breakdown. This morning started normally. James had been on a trip to Seattle since Monday. It was now Thursday. He was supposed to come home tonight. I was working from home today because I had a telehealth session with one of my clients scheduled for 10 a.m., and then I planned to run some errands before James got back. Around 9:30 a.m., there was a knock at my door. Weird, because we live in a quiet neighborhood, and I wasn't expecting any packages. I answered it, and there was a woman standing there who I'd never seen before. She was probably in her mid-50s, professionally dressed in slacks and a blazer, with short gray hair and kind eyes. "Hi," she said, looking a little uncomfortable. "I'm so sorry to bother you. Are you Mrs. Patterson?" Using a fake last name here for privacy. "Yes," I said, confused. "Can I help you?" "My name is Carol Henderson. I'm a real estate agent, and I have this property listed for sale. I was doing a routine drive-by to check on the condition of the exterior for some photos, and I noticed someone was home. I'm a bit confused because the owner told me the property would be vacant." I literally stood there blinking at her like she was speaking another language. "I'm sorry," I said. "I think there's been some mistake. My husband and I own this house. We bought it 2 years ago." The look on her face, I'll never forget it. It was this mixture of confusion, concern, and something that might have been pity. "Ma'am," she said gently, "this house is owned by Redwood Property Management LLC. It's been a rental property for the past 4 years. The owner is selling it, which is why I have it listed. The tenants were given notice to vacate by the end of this month. That notice was sent to this address 3 weeks ago." I felt like the ground was tilting under my feet. "That's impossible," I said. "We have a mortgage. We make payments every month. I've seen the statements." Carol looked genuinely distressed now. "I think you should contact your husband," she said carefully. "There might be some kind of misunderstanding or, I don't know. But according to all the paperwork I have, this is a rental property, and the lease is ending." "I'm so sorry. I can give you the contact information for the property management company if you'd like." I took her card with numb fingers and closed the door. Then I just stood there in my entryway, or what I thought was my entryway, trying to make sense of what she'd just told me. My first instinct was to call James. My husband would clear this up. There was obviously some clerical error, some mix-up with paperwork. Maybe we bought the house from this Redwood Property Management Company and something didn't get filed correctly, but something stopped me from calling him. Some instinct I can't explain. Instead, I opened my laptop and started digging. I found the Redwood Property Management LLC website. I found the listing for my house, for the house I live in, with photos of the exterior and a description saying it was a charming 3-bedroom rental in desirable Northeast Portland neighborhood. Listed for $000. Then I went to the county property records website. Public information. Anyone can look it up. The house is owned by Redwood Property Management LLC. Has been since before James and I bought it. There's no mortgage on record under our names. Nothing. I felt sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. When I could think clearly again, I logged into our shared bank account. I had the login information but rarely used it because James always sent me updates. I started going through statements from the past 2 years. There were payments every month to RMG Lending Services for $100. That's what I thought was our mortgage payment. I'd seen these transactions before and assumed that's what they were. But now I searched for RMG Lending Services and found nothing. No lending company by that name. No website. No records. I dug deeper. I found out you can set up automatic transfers between accounts and name them whatever you want. That $100 every month? It was going into one of James's personal accounts that I didn't have access to. He just labeled the transfer RMG Lending Services, so it would look like a mortgage payment on our statements. I was hyperventilating at this point. I called my best friend Rachel and told her everything. She came right over. She held my hand while I kept digging through our financial records, and what we found made everything so much worse. For the past 3 years, ever since James told me his salary had been cut and he needed to travel more, there had been no deposits from any employer into our shared account under his name.
None. 0.
His paychecks were actually transfers from various personal accounts he'd set up. Accounts I didn't know existed. He was moving money around to make it look like he was getting paid by an employer. So where was the money coming from? That's what I couldn't figure out. We weren't broke. We had about 000 in our shared savings. Bills were being paid. We went on a nice vacation to Mexico last year. We weren't living extravagantly, but we weren't struggling either. Rachel convinced me I needed to look at credit card statements. I found statements for cards I didn't know we had, cards in James's name only. And that's when I found it. Charges in Portland. Lots and lots of charges in Portland. Coffee shops I recognized from our neighborhood. Restaurants we'd eaten at together. Gas stations near our house. All on days when James was supposedly in Seattle or San Francisco or Denver. He wasn't traveling for work. He wasn't traveling at all. But it gets so much worse. I promise you, it gets worse. I checked our phone records through our carrier's website. I could see call logs and text message timestamps, not the content, just the metadata. For the past 3 years, James's phone had been pinging off cell towers in Portland and the surrounding area. Not Seattle. Not San Francisco. Not anywhere else. When he was supposedly on business trips, he was here. In Portland. The whole time. So, what the hell was he doing? Rachel suggested I hire a private investigator, but I didn't want to wait. I was spiraling. I needed answers now. So I did something that I'm not proud of, but I'm also not sorry about. I logged into the Find My app that we'd set up on our phones years ago for safety reasons. We'd never used it. It felt like a violation of privacy, but we both had access to each other's locations. James's phone was at an address in Southeast Portland. Not a hotel.
Not an office building.
A residential address. I put the address into Google Maps. Street View showed me a small, rundown duplex in a neighborhood I'd never been to. We're going there, I told Rachel. Are you sure that's a good idea? She asked. I didn't answer. I just grabbed my keys. We drove across town. It took about 25 minutes. The whole way, my mind was racing through possibilities. Was he having an affair? Was he involved in something illegal? Was he in some kind of witness protection situation and couldn't tell me? Yes, I know how ridiculous that last one sounds, but my brain was grasping for any explanation that wasn't completely horrible. We parked down the street from the duplex. It was run down, like I said, peeling paint, overgrown yard, one of those places that had probably been nice in the 1960s but had been neglected for decades. And there, in the driveway, was James's car. His actual car. The silver Honda Accord he drove every day. I felt like I was going to throw up again. What do you want to do? Rachel whispered, even though we were sitting in her car and no one could hear us. I'm going to knock on the door, I said. Maybe we should. I was already out of the car. I walked up to the duplex. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I knocked on the door of the left unit, the side where James's car was parked. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then I heard footsteps inside. The door opened, and there was James, my husband, standing in the doorway of a duplex I'd never seen before, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, looking at me with an expression of pure horror. Sarah, he said. Not my real name. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? I heard my voice crack. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Seattle. He opened his mouth.
Closed it.
Opened it again. I could literally see him trying to come up with a lie, watching his brain work to manufacture some explanation. Let me in, I said. It wasn't a request. He stepped aside. I walked into the duplex. It was lived in. Fully furnished. There was a couch with a blanket draped over it and a gaming controller on the cushions. A TV was on, paused on some Netflix show. There were dishes in the sink. Mail on the counter. Mail addressed to James Patterson at this address. How long have you lived here? I asked. My voice sounded eerily calm. Sarah, please let me explain. How long? For years, he whispered. For years. We've been married for 5. I walked through the duplex like I was in a dream. A small kitchen. A living room with a gaming setup, nice PC, multiple monitors, expensive gaming chair. A bedroom with an unmade bed. A bathroom that desperately needed cleaning. This was where my husband lived. This was his real home. I don't understand, I said, and I really didn't. My brain couldn't process it. You come home to me. You sleep in our bed. We have dinner together. We have a life together. What is this place? James was crying now. Actual tears running down his face. I'm so sorry, he kept saying. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. What is this? I screamed. And then he told me. He told me everything. And I wish he hadn't, because at least before I could imagine some scenario that made sense. The truth is so much stranger and so much worse. For years ago, About a year into our marriage, James lost his job. His company did restructure, but they didn't just change his territory, they eliminated his position entirely. He was laid off.
He didn't tell me.
Instead, he went out and rented this duplex with money from his severance package. Then he came home and pretended everything was fine. He pretended to go to work every day for 3 months while he looked for another job. But here's where it gets complicated, and here's where I start to understand how some people might actually sympathize with him, even though I'm furious. James has severe anxiety and depression. I knew about the anxiety. He told me early in our relationship that he sometimes struggled with it. What I didn't know was how bad it had gotten. He told me that when he lost his job, he had a complete breakdown. He was having panic attacks every day. He was terrified to tell me because he felt like he was failing as a husband, as a provider. His entire sense of self-worth was tied up in being successful and stable, and suddenly he was neither of those things. The duplex became his safe space. He'd go there in the morning after I left for work, and he'd just exist. Sometimes he'd apply for jobs. Sometimes he'd just play video games or sleep. He was completely paralyzed by depression and anxiety. After a few months of this, his savings from severance were running out. He needed to figure out how to keep up the illusion that he was still working because in his mind, if he told me the truth, I'd leave him. So he started doing freelance work online. Coding projects, website development, some graphic design stuff he'd taught himself. Working under different names, getting paid through PayPal and Venmo. It was sporadic and unreliable, but it was something. Then he discovered online poker. I know how this sounds, he said, and he was still crying, pacing around this depressing little duplex. I know this sounds like a gambling addiction story, but it's not. Or it wasn't. I'm actually good at it, Sarah. Like, really good. For the past 3.5 years, my husband has been making his living and funding our entire life by playing online poker.
He showed me his accounts.
Multiple poker sites. Spreadsheets tracking his wins and losses. And I have to admit, the numbers were shocking. In the past 3 years, he's made over 000 in profit from poker. Some months he'd make 000. Some months he'd make 000. It varied wildly, but overall, he was profitable. That's where our money has been coming from. Not from a sales job. Not from any legitimate employment. From online gambling. The business trips were tournaments, he explained. Online tournaments that would run for several days. I tell you I was traveling so I could stay here and play for 12, 16 hours a day without you wondering why I was so distracted. The hotel souvenirs? He'd order them online or buy them from tourist shops in Portland that sold stuff from other cities. The complaints about his boss and difficult clients? Completely fabricated to make his fake job seem real. Our mortgage payments? He was just moving money into savings, building up a nest egg in case his poker income dried up. The house we bought? He'd rented it from Redwood Property Management and never told me we didn't actually own it. He said he'd planned to eventually save up enough to actually buy a house, and then he'd tell me we were refinancing, and I'd never know the difference. I kept thinking I'd figure out an exit strategy, he said. I kept thinking I'd find a real job and slowly transition back to normal life, and you'd never have to know. But then the poker income stayed good, and it was actually less stressful than a real job, and I kept putting it off. I know how insane that sounds. I know. But I was stuck in this lie, and I didn't know how to get out of it without losing you. I asked him why he didn't just tell me about the poker. If he was good at it and making good money, why not just be honest? Because it's gambling, he said. It's not respectable. What would you have thought if I'd come to you and said, "Hey, honey, I lost my job, but don't worry, I'm going to become a professional poker player"? You would have freaked out. Your family would have freaked out. Everyone would have thought I was having some kind of crisis and making terrible decisions. And here's the thing that I hate. He's not entirely wrong about that. If James had come to me 4 years ago and told me he'd lost his job and wanted to try professional poker, I would have been supportive for maybe a month, and then I would have started pressuring him to find a real job. My parents would have been in my ear about how I'd married someone irresponsible. My mom literally asked me after our wedding if I was sure he was stable enough because he seemed too charming. Yes, seriously. But that doesn't excuse any of this. He could have had that conversation with me. He could have trusted me. Instead, he built this elaborate lie and maintained it for years. I asked him about the property management company finding out. The notice to vacate. He looked even more miserable. I've been scrambling for the past 3 weeks trying to find another rental that I could pass off as something we're buying. I was planning to tell you we decided to move to a different neighborhood for a fresh start. I was going to make it seem like your idea somehow. The scariest part? He probably would have pulled it off. He's been successfully pulling this off for 4 years. I left the duplex. Rachel was waiting in the car, and I just got in and told her to drive. I couldn't be there anymore. I couldn't look at him. I've been ignoring James's calls and texts for the past 6 hours. He's tried calling Rachel too. My phone keeps buzzing with messages. Please come home, so we can talk about this. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I love you so much. Please don't give up on us. I'll get a real job, I'll do whatever you want, just please talk to me. Rachel has been incredible. She drove me to Target just so I'd have somewhere neutral to sit and process. She got me a Starbucks and a box of Kleenex, and she's been sitting here with me for hours, not saying much, just being present. But now I need to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. On one hand, James has been lying to me about literally everything for our entire marriage. The job, the house, the business trips, his daily life. He's maintained this elaborate double life. He's let me believe we were building towards something, home ownership, maybe kids someday, when in reality we own nothing, and our financial situation is completely based on gambling. That betrayal is so deep I can't even fully feel it yet. It's like my brain keeps trying to process it and just short-circuiting. On the other hand, and this is where I know some people will think I'm crazy for even considering this, he was actually taking care of us. The bills were paid. We had savings. We weren't struggling financially. Yes, it was from poker, but he was clearly good at it. He was treating it like a job, keeping records, managing bankrolls, being strategic about it. And he was doing all of this because he was terrified and depressed and felt like he couldn't be honest with me. Does that excuse the lying? Absolutely not. But does it make it more understandable?
Maybe?
I keep thinking about what my reaction would have been if he'd told me the truth 4 years ago. If he'd come to me and said, I lost my job, I'm having panic attacks, I don't think I can go back to corporate sales, I want to try making money playing poker. Would I have been supportive? Would I have given him a chance? Or would I have done exactly what he feared, freaked out, pressured him to get a real job? Maybe even left him? I want to believe I would have been supportive. I want to believe I'm not the kind of person who would abandon their partner when they're struggling. But I honestly don't know. And that uncertainty makes me feel terrible. My friend Rachel, who's been mostly quiet, finally spoke up about an hour ago. I think you need to decide if this is about the lying or about the poker, she said. What do you mean? Like, if James had come to you 4 years ago and been completely honest, told you he lost his job, told you he wanted to try poker, kept you involved in all the financial stuff, would you have been okay with it? Or would the idea of him being a professional gambler have been a deal breaker, no matter what? I didn't have an answer, she continued, because if you would have been okay with it if he'd been honest, then this is about the trust he broke. But if you never would have accepted him being a poker player, then, I don't know. It doesn't excuse the lying, but it maybe explains why he felt trapped. I've been turning that over in my mind ever since. The truth is, I don't know if I could have handled it if he'd been honest. I probably would have stayed with him, but I would have been anxious all the time. I would have been constantly worried about money, constantly checking our accounts, constantly asking if he'd found a real job yet. I would have been a wife who couldn't just trust that he knew what he was doing. And maybe that's exactly what James knew would happen. Maybe he knew that even if I didn't leave, I would make him miserable with my anxiety and judgment. But you know what? That should have been my choice. He took away my agency by lying. He decided what I could and couldn't handle without giving me a chance to prove him wrong. There's also this. What happens now? Even if I decide to try to work through this, our landlord is selling the house. We need to find a new place to live. And how do we do that when we can't prove income from a real job? How do we rent or buy a house when James's employment is online poker? And what about the future? What about kids, which we've talked about wanting someday? Do I bring children into a family where our income is based on gambling? What if James has a bad year? What if his skills decline? What if online poker becomes illegal or heavily regulated? These are all questions I can't answer right now because my brain is still stuck on the fundamental betrayal. My husband has been lying to my face every single day for 4 years. Rachel just asked me what I want to do tonight. I can stay at her place, or I can go home and face James. Part of me wants to go home and scream at him until my voice gives out. Part of me wants to pack a bag and leave and never look back. Part of me wants to just crawl into bed and pretend this is all a nightmare I'll wake up from. But the most confusing part? There's a small part of me, and I hate admitting this, that's almost impressed by the sheer audacity of what he pulled off. The elaborate planning, the attention to detail, the fake souvenirs, the fake complaints about fake coworkers. He created an entire fictional life and maintained it flawlessly for years. If he'd put that much effort into literally anything else, he'd probably be incredibly successful. God, what is wrong with me that I'm even thinking that way? I just got another text from James. I understand if you need space. I'm going to stay at the duplex tonight. But please know that everything I did because I love you, and I was terrified of losing you. I know that doesn't make it okay. I know I need help. I'm already looking for therapists. Please just don't give up on us without giving me a chance to fix this. And that's the thing. He sounds so genuine, so remorseful, so willing to change. But how do I ever trust him again? How do I believe anything he says when he's proven he can look me in the eye and lie effortlessly for years? Rachel is telling me I don't have to make any big decisions tonight. I can just exist for a while, process, feel my feelings, figure out what I need. But I feel this pressure to decide. Do I stay or do I go? Do I try to work through this or do I call a divorce lawyer tomorrow? Everyone is going to have opinions. My parents are going to tell me to leave him immediately. My sister's going to say I should give him another chance because all men mess up sometimes. She stayed with her husband after he had an affair, so her bar is pretty low. My friends will be split. But this isn't about what anyone else thinks. This has to be about what I can live with. Can I live with a husband who lied to me for 4 years? Can I live with the uncertainty of an income based on poker? Can I live with always wondering if there are other secrets he hasn't told me yet? Can I live with the embarrassment of having to explain this to people? Oh, yeah, my husband? He's a professional poker player. Yeah, he let me think he was in sales for 4 years. Yeah, we don't actually own our house. Fun times. But also, can I walk away from 5 years of marriage without at least trying to fix it? Can I walk away from someone who is clearly suffering from mental health issues and made bad decisions out of fear? Can I walk away from someone who, despite the lying, was actually managing to provide for us? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. What I do know is that I feel completely betrayed. I feel stupid for not seeing the signs. I feel angry that he didn't trust me enough to be honest. I feel sad that he was struggling so badly with anxiety and depression that he felt like lying was his only option. I feel confused about what's real in our relationship and what was part of the performance. And underneath all of that, I feel this weird sense of loss for the life I thought I had. This morning, I was married to a sales manager who traveled for work, and we were saving up to maybe buy a bigger house someday. Tonight, I'm married to a professional poker player who lives in a dumpy duplex part-time, and nothing about my life is what I thought it was. It's like someone pulled back a curtain and showed me that everything was just a set. The house isn't ours. The job isn't real. The business trips were fabricated. What else isn't real? Our relationship? His feelings for me? Our future plans? How do I trust anything now? Rachel just ordered us some food because I haven't eaten all day, and she's worried I'm going to pass out. She's being so patient with me, just letting me spiral and process and freak out without judgment. She did say one thing that stuck with me though. The James you fell in love with is still the same person. The guy who makes you laugh, who remembers how you like your coffee, who watches your favorite shows even though he thinks they're boring, who rubs your feet after long days. That's all still real. The job was fake, but that doesn't mean he's fake. Is that true though? Can I separate the real James from the lying James? Or are they the same person? I think what makes this so hard is that it's not like he was cheating on me or being abusive or gambling away our money irresponsibly. In a weird way, he was being responsible. He was making sure we were financially stable. He was still being a good husband in all the ways that mattered to me day to day, except for the massive, relationship-destroying lie he was living. God, I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. I think I'm going to stay at Rachel's tonight. I need at least one night to sleep on this, if I can sleep at all, before I face James again. Tomorrow I'll need to start figuring out practical things. Do we have enough money to get a new rental? What happens to all our stuff when we move? Do I tell my parents? Do I tell my coworkers? Do I keep this secret the way James kept his? And at some point, I'm going to have to sit down with James and have a real, honest conversation about everything. About why he lied, about his mental health, about what happens next, about whether there's any possibility of moving forward together. But tonight, I'm just going to sit in this Target parking lot with my best friend and try to accept that my entire life just imploded in the span of 8 hours. Update: it's been 2 hours since I posted this and reading all your comments. I'm overwhelmed by how many people have responded. Some of you are telling me to run and never look back. Some of you are saying James clearly has serious mental health issues and deserves compassion. Some of you are calling him a master manipulator. Some of you are calling me naive for even considering staying. You're probably all right in different ways. I called James about an hour ago. I didn't tell him where I was, but I told him I wasn't ready to come home yet. He asked if we could meet tomorrow afternoon to talk. I agreed. Before we hung up, I asked him one question. Is there anything else you've lied about? Anything at all? Because I need to know right now if there are more surprises coming. There was a long pause. Then he said, no. This was it. This was the one big lie that everything else spiraled from. I swear on everything I have, there's nothing else. I don't know if I believe him, but I guess we'll see. Rachel and I are at her apartment now. She made up her guest room for me. She also poured me a very large glass of wine, which I'm currently drinking even though I'm not sure it's helping. Tomorrow I'll talk to James. I'll figure out what questions I need to ask. I'll see if there's any path forward. Tonight, I'm just trying to survive. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for your advice, even when it conflicts with each other. Thank you for making me feel less alone in this absolute nightmare. I'll update again after I talk to James tomorrow. Wish me luck, or strength, or wisdom, or all of the above. Update: I met with James today, and somehow things got even more complicated. Posted 1 day later. I don't even know if anyone is still following the saga, but I need to get this out because what happened today has left me even more confused than I was yesterday, which I didn't think was possible. First, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I read every single comment, even the brutal ones telling me I was an idiot for even considering talking to James. Some of you shared your own stories of betrayal, and I'm so sorry you went through that. Some of you shared perspectives on mental health and gambling that gave me a lot to think about. I didn't sleep much last night. Rachel was amazing. She made me breakfast this morning even though I barely touched it, and she offered to come with me to meet James. I told her I needed to do this alone. James and I agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet park near our rental house. He was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench looking like he hadn't slept at all either. His eyes were red, his hair was a mess, and he was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. When he saw me walking toward him, he stood up like he was going to hug me, but I held up my hand to stop him. I wasn't ready for physical contact. He nodded and sat back down. I sat on the opposite end of the bench, as far from him as I could while still technically sharing the same piece of furniture. For a moment, we just sat there in excruciating silence. Then I said, I need you to tell me everything. From the beginning. No more lies, no more omissions. Everything. And he did. The story he told me yesterday was true. He did lose his job 4 years ago. He did have a breakdown. He did start playing poker. But there was more. He told me that when he first started playing poker, it wasn't because he thought he'd be good at it. It was because he was suicidal. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. James told me that in those first few months after losing his job, he was having thoughts about ending his life almost daily. He felt like a complete failure. He felt like I'd be better off without him. He felt like he was drowning and couldn't see any way out. The duplex wasn't meant to be a secret second home, he said, his voice shaking. It was supposed to be where I went to not be a burden to you anymore. He said he'd rented it with intention of taking all his remaining savings, setting me up as the beneficiary on his life insurance, and disappearing from my life permanently. I started crying. I couldn't help it. But then he said something changed. He discovered poker through some online forum he'd been lurking on. He started playing with tiny amounts of money just to distract himself from his dark thoughts. And he discovered he was actually good at it. Like, really good. It gave me a purpose, he explained. For the first time in months, I had something to focus on that wasn't my failure or my depression. I had something I was good at. And when I started actually making money, even just small amounts at first, I thought maybe I didn't have to disappear. Maybe I could figure out how to provide for us this way. Maybe I wasn't completely useless. He told me that the poker became his lifeline. It was the thing that kept him going. Every win felt like proof that he had value. Every tournament he cashed in felt like he was justifying his existence. But the lie had already started. He'd already told me he still had his job. He'd already created this fiction. And the longer it went on, the harder it became to come clean. I know I should have told you, he said, and he was crying now too. I know I should have trusted you with the truth. But I was so ashamed. I wasn't just ashamed about losing my job. I was ashamed that I'd fallen apart so badly that I'd considered leaving you permanently. How do you tell your wife that? How do you say, hey honey, I rented a secret apartment because I was planning my exit strategy from life? I didn't have an answer for that. He continued talking, telling me about how the poker income grew, how he developed a strategy and started treating it like a real job, how he convinced himself that as long as he was providing for us financially, the lie was not okay, but manageable. Every time I came home to you, I felt this mix of relief and guilt, he said. Relief that I got to be with you, that I hadn't gone through with my worst thoughts, that I'd found a way to keep us afloat. But guilt because I knew I was lying to you every single day. Then he told me about therapy. Apparently, James has been seeing a therapist for the past year and a half. He just never told me because how could he explain it without explaining everything else? His therapist, who he sees via video sessions from the duplex, has been working with him on his anxiety and depression. They've discussed the lie multiple times. His therapist has been encouraging him to tell me the truth, but James kept putting it off. She told me that the longer I waited, the worse it would be, James said. She was right. She warned me that living a double life would eventually become unsustainable. She was right about that too. He pulled out his phone and showed me messages with his therapist, appointment confirmations, insurance statements. It was all real. He's been actively working on his mental health, just secretly. At this point, I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Sympathy? Both. Neither? Then came the part that really threw me. I want to show you something, James said. Will you come with me to the duplex? I hesitated. Being in that space yesterday had been traumatic. But I agreed. We drove separately. When we got there, James led me inside and over to his computer. I want to show you the finances, he said. All of it. No more secrets. He opened up spreadsheet after spreadsheet. Bank accounts, poker accounts, investment accounts I didn't know existed. The poker profits over the past 3.5 years? 0, 0, 0. But that's not all. James had been taking a portion of his poker winnings every month and investing them. Conservative investments, index funds, bonds, nothing risky. He didn't touch those accounts except to add to them. As of today, those investments are worth 0, 0, 0. He also had been putting money into a high-yield savings account that I didn't know about. Another 0, 0, 0. And remember those mortgage payments he'd been faking? That money didn't just sit in some account doing nothing. He'd been actually saving it. Over 2 years, that's another 400. Altogether, James has saved and invested nearly 0, 0, 0 over the past 3.5 years. I stood there staring at these numbers on his screen, not comprehending what I was seeing. This was supposed to be our house fund, he said quietly. I was saving so I could buy us an actual house. A nice one. I thought if I could just save enough, I could tell you we were buying a house and then we'd actually be buying it with cash and you'd never have to know where the money really came from. You've saved almost 0, 0, 0, I said slowly. From poker? Yes. In 3.5 years? Yes. My brain was short-circuiting again. This morning I thought we were broke, living paycheck to paycheck from gambling winnings. Now I was learning we had more money than I'd ever imagined having at our age. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked. If you were doing this well, if you were being this responsible with the money, why keep it a secret? Because it's still gambling, he said. Because it's still not respectable. Because your parents would still think I was irresponsible. Because even if you tried to be supportive, you'd always be worried about what would happen if my luck ran out. And maybe most importantly, because by the time I was doing well enough to prove this was viable, I'd already been lying for so long that coming clean meant admitting to years of deception. He had a point. If he'd told me 6 months into his poker career that he'd made 0, 0, 0, I probably would have said it was just beginner's luck and pushed him to find a real job anyway. If he told me a year in that he'd made 0, 0, 0, I might have been impressed but still nervous about the sustainability. There was probably no perfect time to tell me because the lie had become too big. I need to tell you something else, James said, and my heart sank because how could there possibly be more? The house, he said. Our rental. I already talked to the property management company. I made an offer to buy it. What? I offered them 0, 0, 0, all cash, 0, 0, 0 over their listing price, with a quick close. They accepted this morning. We're buying the house. For real this time. I sat down on his gaming chair because my legs felt weak. You did what? I'm buying us the house, he said. The one you think of as our home. The one where you've been living for 2 years and building a life. I'm making it actually ours. The closing should be in about 3 weeks.
I didn't know what to say.
Part of me wanted to scream that he can't just throw money at this problem and expect it to fix everything. Part of me was stunned by the gesture. Part of me was still processing that we apparently had 0, 0, 0. Sarah, James said, and he got down on his knees in front of me, which felt way too much like a proposal and made me uncomfortable. I know I messed up. I know I broke your trust in the worst possible way. I know that having money doesn't fix the lying. But I need you to understand that everything I did was because I love you and I was trying to take care of us the only way I knew how. You should have trusted me, I said, and I was crying again. You should have told me you were struggling. You should have given me a chance to support you.
I know. I know that now.
My therapist has been telling me that for a year. But I was so deep in my depression and anxiety that I couldn't see it. I just kept thinking that if I could make enough money, if I could provide well enough, then maybe I wasn't completely worthless. We sat there in that depressing duplex for another 2 hours, talking through everything. He showed me his therapy notes. With his therapist's permission, he'd asked her this morning if he could share them with me. He showed me the books he'd been reading about poker strategy, about managing anxiety, about being honest in relationships. The irony of that last one was not lost on either of us. He told me that he'd already started looking for a real job, but that he wanted to be honest with me about something. He doesn't want to go back to corporate sales. It made him miserable even before he was laid off. He wants to figure out something else, maybe something that lets him work from home. What if, he said hesitantly, what if I kept playing poker, but I was completely transparent with you about it? You'd have access to all the accounts. You'd know exactly how much I'm making or losing. You'd be involved in all the financial decisions. I'd set strict bankroll management rules. I'd treat it like the job it actually is. I don't know, I said honestly. I'm not saying it has to be forever, he added quickly. But maybe for the next year while I figure out what else I want to do? We have enough saved that even if I completely stopped playing tomorrow, we'd be okay for years. But if I can keep it going while I figure out my next move, while we use some of this money to buy the house and get settled, would you be willing to try? I told him I needed more time to think about it. Before I left, I asked him about the duplex. Are you going to keep it?
He shook his head.
The lease is month to month. I'm giving notice.
I don't need it anymore.
I don't need a secret place to hide. If we're going to move forward, if you're willing to give me that chance, then I need to be all in on our real life together, not splitting myself between two worlds. And what if I decide I can't get past this? I asked. He looked devastated but said, then I'll respect that. I'll sign whatever divorce papers you want. I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. You're entitled to half of everything, obviously. But I really, really hope you'll at least consider couples counseling before you make a final decision. I drove back to Rachel's apartment in a complete daze. When I walked in, she took one look at my face and said, okay, spill. Everything. I told her everything. The suicidal thoughts, the therapy, the 000, the house purchase, all of it. Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she said, so he's been lying to you for 4 years, but he's also been secretly saving you from financial ruin, dealing with severe mental health issues, and actively trying to get better? Apparently. And now he's buying you a house. Buying you as a house. In theory. If I stay. This is the most complicated relationship situation I've ever heard of, Rachel said. She's not wrong. Here's where I'm at now. I'm still angry about the lying. I'm still hurt that he didn't trust me with the truth. I'm still processing the fact that my husband was suicidal and I had no idea. But I don't know. I'm seeing this from a different angle now. James didn't lie to me so he could cheat or steal or hurt me. He lied because he was drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. He lied because he felt worthless and was trying to prove to himself that he had value. He lied because he was terrified of losing me. Are those good reasons for lying?
No.
But they're understandable reasons. And the concrete facts are, he's been taking care of us financially. He's been working on his mental health. He's been planning for our future, even if he was doing it in the most ass-backwards way possible. A lot of you commented on my last post that this is financial abuse or manipulation. And I hear that. But I'm not sure it fits here. He didn't restrict my access to money. He didn't control what I spent. He didn't hide debt or put us in financial danger. He was lying about the source of our income, which is terrible, but he wasn't using money to control or manipulate me. If anything, he was putting enormous pressure on himself to keep earning money through poker so that I'd never have to worry or know the truth. Is that healthy? Absolutely not. But is it abuse? I don't think so. Some of you said he's a master manipulator who will keep lying. That's possible. I can't know for sure. But after seeing his therapy records, his financial spreadsheets, his notes and plans, I don't think he's a calculating con artist. I think he's a deeply anxious person who made terrible decisions while in crisis and then got stuck in those decisions. And here's the thing that's been nagging at me. If roles were reversed, would I want grace? If I'd lost my job and fallen into such severe depression that I'd considered suicide, if I'd found an unconventional way to earn money and support us, if I'd been too afraid and ashamed to tell the truth, would I want my partner to give me a chance to make it right? Or would I want them to immediately write me off as irredeemable? I think I'd want grace. I think I'd want a chance. That doesn't mean I'm ready to just forgive and forget. But I think I'm willing to try. I'm going to insist on couples counseling. I'm going to insist on complete financial transparency moving forward. I'm going to insist that he continues his individual therapy. I'm going to need time to rebuild trust, and there will probably be moments where I'm irrationally angry or suspicious, and he'll have to deal with that. But I think I'm willing to try.
Rachel thinks I'm crazy.
She thinks James is going to turn out to have more secrets, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And maybe she's right. Maybe I'm being naive. But I keep coming back to this. The James the first knew before yesterday, the one who made me laugh, who was thoughtful and kind, who was my partner and my best friend, that person is still real. Yes, he was lying about his job. But he wasn't lying about loving me. He wasn't lying about wanting to build a life with me. He wasn't faking our entire relationship. The job was fake. The business trips were fake. The house ownership was fake. But our marriage? That was real. Complicated and built on lies in some ways, but real in the ways that matter. At least, I hope it was. I guess I'm about to find out. I'm meeting with James again tomorrow, and I'm going to tell him I'm willing to try counseling. I'm going to tell him my conditions for moving forward. And then we'll see if he can actually follow through on his promises. I'll update again after we've started counseling. Or, if something else crazy happens. At this point, I wouldn't even be surprised. Thanks again for all your support, advice, and perspective. Even those of you who think I'm making a huge mistake, I appreciate you caring enough to warn me. Wish me luck. I think I'm going to need it. Final update, 6 months later, and here's where we ended up. Posted 6 months after the initial discovery. I know it's been a long time since my last update, but several people have messaged me asking how things turned out, so I figured I owed you all a final update on this whole mess. Quick recap for anyone just finding this. 6 months ago, I discovered my husband had been lying about having a job for 3 years, was actually making our living playing online poker, and we didn't actually own our house. It was a whole thing. You can read the previous posts for details. So here's where we are now. James and I stayed together. We've been in couples counseling for 6 months, going every week without fail. He's also continued his individual therapy. We're working on rebuilding trust, and it's been hard, but we're making progress. The house purchase went through. We officially own it now, like actually own it, with both our names on the deed. It feels surreal to say our house and actually mean it. James also added me to all his financial accounts. Every single one. I have complete access to everything. I check them regularly, not because I think he's hiding money, but because I need that transparency to feel secure. As for the poker, James is still playing, but with some major changes. He set up strict rules with his therapist and our couples counselor about bankroll management, work-life balance, and transparency. He plays during work hours and doesn't bring it into our personal time. He treats it like a job. He keeps records, pays taxes, yes, apparently you're supposed to report gambling winnings, who knew, and has set limits on how much of our savings he can risk. And honestly, he's still doing really well at it. In the past 6 months, he's made another 000, which feels insane to write. But here's the big news. James has also started a side business. He's been getting requests from other poker players who want coaching, so he started offering strategy sessions and courses. It started small, but it's growing. He's actually really good at teaching, and it's giving him a sense of purpose beyond just playing himself. He's also been approached about writing a book about his experience, not just the poker strategy, but the mental health aspect of it. How he used poker to pull himself out of a dark place, how he manages anxiety while playing, that kind of thing.
He's thinking about it.
As for me, I had to do a lot of work in therapy too. I had to confront the fact that I probably was judgmental about unconventional career paths, that my anxiety about financial security was partly what drove James to feel like he couldn't be honest. That doesn't excuse his lying, but it gave me insight into my part in creating an environment where he felt he couldn't tell me the truth. I also had to work through a lot of trust issues. There were weeks where I was convinced he was lying about other things, where I'd check his location obsessively or go through his phone, with his permission, but still. Our counselor helped me see that this was normal, but that I needed to work toward trusting him again, not staying in that hypervigilant state forever. We told our families everything about 3 months ago. It was rough. My parents reacted exactly as James feared they would. Lots of, "How could you be so irresponsible?" Lots of, "You need to get a real job." lots of judgment. But when they saw our financial statements and realized we actually own our house outright and have substantial savings, they backed off a bit. They're still not thrilled, but they're no longer actively trying to convince me to leave him. James's parents were surprisingly supportive. His dad actually admitted that he'd struggled with depression too, and wished he'd been brave enough to seek help the way James eventually did. My friends were split. Some of them thought I was crazy for staying. Some understood. Rachel, my best friend who was with me through the worst of it, has come around. She still thinks James screwed up majorly, but she's seen how hard he's been working to make things right, and she respects that I made an informed choice to stay. The duplex is long gone. James gave notice and moved everything out. We donated a lot of his stuff from there and kept some of his gaming equipment, which is now set up in our spare bedroom. He works from home now, which took some adjustment, but it's actually been nice having him around more. Our relationship is different now. We're more honest with each other, but it's also harder in some ways. I can't just trust blindly anymore, and that loss of innocence makes things more complicated. But we're also communicating better than we ever did before. We have hard conversations instead of avoiding them. We check in with each other about mental health regularly. James has hard days. Days where his anxiety is bad. Days where he questions his self-worth. Days where he feels guilty about what he put me through. But he's learned to talk about those days instead of hiding them. And I've learned to support him without trying to fix everything. I have hard days too. Days where I'm angry all over again about the lying. Days where I'm scared he's going to relapse into secrecy. Days where I wonder if I made the right choice by staying.
But those days are getting less frequent.
One thing that's helped, James wrote me a letter. A long, detailed letter explaining everything from his perspective. The fear, the shame, the desperation, the gradual realization that he created a trap for himself. He didn't ask me to forgive him in the letter. He just wanted me to understand. I've read it probably 50 times. Sometimes it makes me angry, sometimes it makes me sad, but it always helps me remember that he's human and flawed and was doing his best even when his best was really messed up. We're also planning for the future now. Real plans based on real information. We've talked about kids, not ready yet, but in a few years maybe. We've talked about what happens if the poker income dries up. We have enough saved to be comfortable, and he transitioned to more coaching/writing. We've talked about retirement. Apparently professional poker players can have IRAs, who knew? Is our relationship perfect? Hell no. Do I still have moments of doubt? Absolutely. But am I glad I gave him a chance? Yeah, I think I am. For those of you who warned me that I was making a mistake, that James would turn out to be a pathological liar with more secrets, I get why you thought that, and maybe you're still right, and there's something I don't know about yet. But 6 months in, with complete financial transparency, with regular therapy, with open communication, I haven't found any other lies. I think what I found 6 months ago really was everything. For those of you who encouraged me to show grace and give him a chance, thank you. It hasn't been easy, but I think it's been worth it. And for those of you who shared your own stories of betrayal, mental health struggles, and relationship challenges, thank you for making me feel less alone. Someone in the comments of my first post said that trust is like a plate. Once it's broken, you can glue it back together, but it'll never be exactly the same as it was. There will always be cracks. That's turned out to be really true. James and I will never have that easy, uncomplicated trust we had before. But maybe the glued-together version, cracks and all, can be strong enough. Different but strong. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe James will play poker for the next 20 years. Maybe he'll transition fully into coaching and writing. Maybe he'll discover some other passion. Maybe we'll hit rough patches. Maybe the trust issues will resurface in ways we can't work through. But right now, today, we're okay. We're working on it. We're building something real together, finally with honesty as the foundation. That's all anyone can really do, right? Thanks for following this journey with me, Reddit. I hope I never have to post anything this dramatic again, but if I've learned anything, it's that life is unpredictable. To anyone out there dealing with a partner's betrayal, there's no one right answer. Some relationships are worth fighting for, some aren't. Only you can decide which is which. Trust your gut, get therapy, and give yourself time to process before making big decisions. To anyone out there struggling with mental health and feeling like you can't tell your partner, please tell them. Yes, it's scary. Yes, they might react badly at first. But living a lie is worse. And you deserve support, not isolation. And to anyone out there making their living in unconventional ways, be honest about it. Don't do what James did. The lie will always be worse than the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Okay, I think that's everything. Thanks for listening, Reddit. You've been incredibly helpful, even when you were telling me things I didn't want to hear. Final thought. James wants me to tell you all that he's sorry he lied to me, but he's not sorry he found poker when he did, because he genuinely believes it saved his life. And honestly, after everything we've talked about in therapy, I believe that too. The lying was terrible, but the poker itself, the focus, the strategy, the wins that gave him confidence, that might have been what kept him alive long enough to get help. Life is complicated. People are complicated. Sometimes the things that save us are messy and unconventional and imperfect. I guess that's okay. Signing off for good this time. Thanks again, everyone. Comment 1. This is the most complicated story I've ever read on Reddit. I genuinely don't know if you made the right choice, but I'm glad you're happy with it. That's what matters. Comment 2. As someone who plays poker professionally, I just want to say your husband did things mostly right from a poker perspective. Being profitable over 3+ years is hard. Most people lose money. The fact that he was keeping records, managing bankroll, and treating it like a job shows he wasn't just some degenerate gambler. Still screwed up big time with the lying though. Comment 3. Therapist here, not your therapist obviously. This is a really interesting case study in how mental health crises can lead to terrible decisions that make sense in the moment. I'm glad you both got into treatment. The couple's counseling is essential here. Trust can be rebuilt, but it takes work from both parties. Commenter 4. I'm honestly shocked you stayed. If you'd come to me 6 months ago, I would have told you to run. But reading this update, I don't know. You seem thoughtful about your choice, and you've put protections in place. I still think you should keep your name on everything and maintain some financial independence just in case, but maybe it'll work out. Commenter 5. My husband lied to me about losing his job for 6 months, and I divorced him immediately. Reading your story makes me wonder if I should have given him a chance, but also I'm still angry 7 years later, so maybe I made the right call for me. Every situation is different, I guess. Comment 6. Thank you for sharing the mental health aspects of this. A lot of people don't understand how depression and anxiety can literally make you do things that seem insane from the outside, but feel like the only option when you're in it. James needed help, not just judgment. I'm glad he got it. Comment 7. I ran the numbers, and honestly your husband did better than most financial advisors would have done with that money over the same time period. A 3.5-year return of K on initial investments plus another K in stable savings? That's impressive. Still should have been honest, but from a pure financial perspective, he wasn't irresponsible at all. Comment 8. I'm sorry, but I still don't trust him. People who can lie that elaborately for that long don't just change. I think you're going to find more lies eventually. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not optimistic. Comment 9. Married 32 years here. Every marriage has secrets and lies of some kind. Most people don't want to admit it, but it's true. The question isn't whether your partner will ever lie to you. They will, about something, eventually. The question is whether the lies are deal breakers and whether you can work through them. Sounds like you've decided this wasn't a deal breaker for you. That's valid. Thank you for updating Opie. This was a wild ride from start to finish.